संसारन्नवगुरे यकर्णधारस्वरूपकः नमोऽस्तु रामकृष्णाय तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। जननीं शरदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। नमो श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्द सूरये सच्चित् सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे। वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम्। नमो महावदन्नाय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनामिने गौरतीशे नमः। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वृन्दायै तुलसीदेव्यै प्रियायै केशवस्य च कृष्णभक्तिपदे देवी सत्यवत्यै नमो नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
Pranam Swamiji from Srimad Vidyaniketan. We're incredibly grateful for this opportunity here today. Before beginning our kirtan, we would like to offer a brief translation of the beautiful words that we will be singing. Yearning for Lord's love. This poem reflects spiritual yearning through the deep mood of surrender, repentance through recognizing self-imperfection, and hope and trust through longing for divine mercy. O Lord Hari, my life is spent in vain, this rarest human birth, a fleeting chain. Yet never once my heart inclined to serve Radha Krishna, love divine. Instead, I drank the poison deep of worldly ties that make souls weep. Alas, oh why did I not see the holy name that sets souls free? From Goloka's realm, the treasure fell, a nectar rare with sacred name spell. Yet in my heart, no thirst awoke for Hari's name, pure love's cloak. Day and night in flames I burn, yet to your grace I never turn. O foolish mind, so lost, so blind, why leave the cure of soul behind? The Lord of Raja, kind and bright, came as Gara, golden light, and Balarama, mercy's tide, as Nityananda opened wide the gates of love to all who came by chanting Krishna's holy name. Jagai Madhai proves so clear that mercy flows to all sincere. O Lord Krishna, son of Nanda sweet, with Radha's grace at your feet, let me rest my wandering soul in your embrace, my only goal. Narottama weeps in deep despair. Without you, Lord, I am in nowhere. Push me not from your lotus feet, for you alone make life complete.
Hari Hari Bifole janamon guainu Hari Bifole janam goainu Manusya janam paya Radha Krishna navajia janam paya Radha Krishna navajia janiya shuniya bisho kaino janiya জানিয়া শুনিয়া বিশ্ব কাইনো
জানিয়া শুনিয়া বিশ্ব কাইনো
গোলকের প্রেম ধন হরি নাম সংকীর্তন না জন্মিল কেনে তাই রতি না জন্মিল কেনে তাই রতি না জন্মিল সংসার বিষানলে দিবানিশি হিয়া জলে সংসার বিষানলে দিবানিশি হিয়া জলে জুড়াইতে না কইনু জুড়াইতে না কইনু ব্রজেন্দ্র নন্দন শচী সুত হইল সে
ব্রজেন্দ্র নন্দন যে শচী সুত হইল সে
বলরাম হইল নিতাই বলরাম হইল দিনহীন যত ছিল হরি নামে উদ্ধারিল দিনহীন যত ছিল হরি নামে উদ্ধারিল তার সাক্ষী জগায় মাদা তার সাক্ষী জগায় মাদা হা হা প্রভু নন্দ সুত বৃষভানু সুতাযুত হা হা প্রভু নন্দ সুত হা হা প্রভু নন্দ সুত বৃষভানু সুতাযুত হা হা প্রভু করুণা করো এইবার করুণা করো করুণা করো নরোত্তম দাস কয় না ঠেলি হো রাঙ্গা পায় নরোত্তম দাস কয় না ঠেলি হো রাঙ্গা পায় তোমা বিনে খেয়াছে তোমা বিনে খেয়াছে হরি হরি বল রে
হরি হরি বল রে
হরি হরি বল রে
হরি হরি বল রে
প্রেমানন্দে বাহু তুলে হরি হরি বল রে প্রেমানন্দে বাহু তুলে
হরি হরি বল রে
কলির তারক ব্রহ্ম নাম নিয়ে তারা দুবাই এলো রে তারক ব্রহ্ম নাম নিয়ে
তারা দুভাই এলো রে
আচণ্ডালে কোল দিতে তারা দুবাই এলো রে
আচণ্ডালে কোল দিতে তারা দুভাই এলো রে
পাপি তাপি উদ্ধারিতে তারা দুবাই এলো রে
পাপি তাপি উদ্ধারিতে তারা দুভাই এলো রে
গৌর নিতাই এলো রে
গৌরনিতাই এলো রে
গৌর নিতাই এলো রে
গৌরনিতাই এলো রে
ওরে ঘরে ঘরে নাম বিলাতে গৌর নিতাই এলো রে
ঘরে ঘরে নাম বিলাতে গৌরনিতাই এলো রে
ওরে ঘরে ঘরে নাম বিলাতে গৌর নিতাই এলো রে ঘরে ঘরে
নাম বিলাতে গৌরনিতাই এলো রে
হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে হরে Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Manama Hari Hari Bifale Jana Pranam Swami. Pranam. Subhai Pranam.
Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning and namaste, everybody. We are especially grateful to Professor Ratandhar and his wonderful accompanying group of the Kirtan party here. I think we should all give them a big hand. What you heard just now, those of you who have read the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Kathamrita, you find again and again Sri Ramakrishna is surrounded by singers and the music, and there is dancing. So this kirtan is not complete without dancing, by the way. We don't have space here. We have to go to Central Park for that. And Sri Ramakrishna goes again and again into samadhi, into ecstasy. So what was the music? What was he listening to? This is what you heard. This is one of the kinds of music. There was also Kali Kirtan, but this is Kirtan, the Vaishnava form of Kirtan. And today's talk is about that. The story of the Kirtan. It's found in different parts of India, but especially in the eastern part of India, it was popularized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu more than 600 years ago. It's a story that continues here today in New York, because what you know for the last several decades as the Hare Krishnas, the ISKCON, which has its birth in New York itself, but it comes from the same lineage, the Gauriya Vaishnava lineage, the Bengal school of Vaishnavism. At the source of that is the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom we are going to speak about now. He is widely regarded as an avatar. We worship him as an avatar. Sri Ramakrishna certainly regarded him as an incarnation of God. So, the story of the Kirtan. Sri Chaitanya's life is very well documented. There are a lot of accounts of it, especially the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraj and others also. We won't be able to cover even a fraction of what we know about him. And wonderful, wonderful stories of devotion and love, the ecstatic love of Radha and Krishna. So the story starts some more than 600 years ago in the eastern part of India, in Navadvip. So around this time of the year. Why we are talking about it today is, you know, the Hindu community, we celebrated Holi a few days ago. One of the significance of Holi is that it's, in Bengali calendar, it's Dol Purnima, which is the birthday of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I think in the English calendar, maybe it would be February 6th or something like that, but it's a lunar calendar. Eastern part of India, Navadvip, Nadia, that's where he was born. And from his very childhood, so many divine stories are there about him. His mother was Shachi Devi. He lost his father when he was very young. His mother brought him up, and of course he was the apple of her eye, because one reason was she had also lost her elder son because he became a monk and left home at an early age. Vishwarup, his name was Vishwarup. So Chaitanya, whose name was Nimai. Nimai had an elder brother, Vishwarup, who became a monk and left. Though some say that years later, when Chaitanya got his other divine companion, Nityananda, who spread the Vaishnava religion, especially among householders in the eastern part of India, who was a wandering monk. Some say that he was and it's the same Vishwarup who came back. That's one story. So Nimai grew up. Nimai, one reason is why he's called Nimai is he's supposed to have been born under a neem tree. So Nimai, in that sense. It was also known as Gauranga. In the song, if those who know the Bengali, if you notice, Tapato Gaura Kanchana, that means like his skin was like molten gold. It's very fair, but a sort of golden complexion, which was supposed to be the color of Radha. More about that later. Grew up quite a mischievous child, and but very beloved of the people, the villagers there. He was very highly educated. That area, Navadvip, was also at that time very well known for a high level of Sanskritic education, in particular the development of Navya, which is the Indian school of logic. A little bit about that. The Indian school of logic, called Nyaya, goes back thousands of years. There are the Nyaya Sutras of Gautama, and it was one of the orthodox schools of Hinduism. So they developed their own unique branch of Indian logic, which was used by all philosophical schools, including the one which I talk about more, the Advaita Vedanta. So all of these schools, even if they didn't agree with the metaphysical claims of the Nyaya school, which was dualistic or pluralistic, but they all used the logic developed by them. And what happened was, about 1,000 years ago, in a place called Mithila, which is in the present-day Bihar, a revolution took place in this school. There was a great logician called Gangesha, and Gangesha wrote a book, a masterpiece called the Tattva Chintamani, the jewel, the crest jewel of metaphysics or reality. But it was basically a book on epistemology and logic. And it revolutionized the ancient school of Indian logic. So that's why it was, from that time onwards, it became what was called Navya, the new school of logic. But this being India, even the new school of logic is 1,000 years old. And the older school of logic, which was 3,000 years old maybe, was called Prachina Nyaya now, ancient logic. But why am I speaking about that? At one point, sometime after Gangesha, scholars went from Navadvip, Nadia, this area, and to Mithila and learned this new logic and imported it back to their native land. And very soon, this Navadvip, the scholars of Navadvip, they excelled even the original scholars of Mithila, and Navadvip became the center for learning logic in India. Scholars from the south of India, the north and the west, even later on, in later centuries, there are accounts of Tibetan lamas crossing the Himalayas and coming to Navadvip to learn logic. So it was in this milieu that Nimai grew up, and being the son of a Brahmin scholar, he, of course, picked up Sanskrit, and he learned this Navya, and he had his own school. It was fashionable at that time to start schools of logic. So he had his own school of logic, and he was very successful. He was younger than most of the teachers, but brilliant, and he attracted lots of students, not only for the brilliance of his teaching, but also for his personality. He was, all the descriptions of him, he was very tall. He towered over everybody else. Later on in the Kirtans, there are descriptions of him singing, surrounded by others who were playing the drums, the khol, which you just heard here. Two of them here. The descriptions of him when he's in the Kirtan group, there imagine 8 of those drums playing together. 8. And you heard one cymbal here. There used to be 32 cymbals. And of course, much larger. And of course, this was in the open air. And the description is, this person, he towered over all the others who were all singing and dancing around him. And they would all crowd around him to see him. Anyway, and he was witty, he was charming, he was loving, he was loads of fun to be around. And so it attracted a lot of young people. The older scholars sometimes found him to be arrogant. I mean, they found a certain lack of respect in him. So, for example, there's this story of the great Sanskrit scholar and poet Keshava. There's one of the stories. So this Keshava, who is well known as a poet, what is called was called, or even now is called, Ashu Kavi. That means someone who can compose Sanskrit verses on the spur of the moment. You tell him and he'll compose a dozen verses for you. So there is a beautiful description of Nimai's encounter with this great scholar. For some reason, it's midnight, or it's moonlit night. There's a moon in the sky. There's the Ganga nearby. And Nimai requests Keshava to compose poems on the beauty of the Ganga. And Keshava does so, 100 verses, which he rattled off. And Keshava said, can give a critical review. And Nimai, he picked up one verse from the middle of those 100 verses. He had heard all of them, and he remembered all of those 100 verses. Apparently, that's the story. And he picked up one verse at random and pointed out 5 faults in the rules of Sanskrit poetics. Keshava was devastated until later that night, because this is a young scholar, much younger than him. And he's an established scholar, and to find that I'm making mistakes in my... This is, by the way, a tactic of logicians. It's sort of intimidating. So you challenge somebody to a debate. Even in your challenge, he points out half a dozen mistakes in your grammar and your composition. It's there even now. I heard of this monk in a Kumbh Mela, not this one, earlier one. So he said, he told me about his teacher, who was a great scholar, Karpatriji. So somebody challenged him to a debate. And you have to send a letter in Sanskrit challenging you to a debate. So the letter was delivered to this great Swami, who took a look at the letter and corrected a dozen mistakes in grammar and sent it back to him. And with the short suggestion, study grammar first. In Hindi, aap Laghu padhiye, Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. That is the introductory book on Sanskrit grammar. Anyway, but that night Keshava had a dream that Mother Saraswati, the Devi Saraswati, who's the goddess of learning, appears to him in his dream and says that, do not be heartbroken. I dwell in that young man. This Saraswati, she dwells in that young person. Nobody could stand up to him in debate. We'll pass over that quickly, but just one story. He had a friend, Raghunath, who was also a great logician, maybe one of the best in his class, just next to Nimai. One day they were going on a boat on the river, and Nimai had written a book. It was a talk of the town, that he's writing a book on logic, which will obviously be a masterpiece. And Raghunath asks to see the book. And Nimai hands him the book. They're sitting on the boat. And Raghunath flips through the pages. Remember, at that time, everything was handwritten. And Raghunath weeps. And Nimai asks him, what's wrong? And he says that, I am writing my own book. And now I see nobody's going to read my book after this. Nimai asks for his book back and casually tosses it into the river. And the book is lost. We don't have anything written by him except one verse, one hymn, Siksha Ashtakam, which is written by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a great scholar. We have no written works by him. And that book was lost. Swami Tapasyanandaji was a very scholarly, saintly monk of our order. He was the vice president of our order. He says that, writing about this incident. The world lost a masterpiece of logic, but gained a spiritual master. Now all this came to an end quite suddenly. Nimai had gone to Gaya to perform the obsequies for his departed father. There he met his guru, Ishwar Puri. So Ishwar Puri was, of course, a monk of the Puri lineage, which is our lineage, but he was very devotional, and he was a devotee of Krishna. And he initiated Nimai into the Krishna mantra. Nimai immediately flew into an ecstasy, and he kept on repeating the Krishna mantra. He was quite changed. And he developed this hunger for the presence of Krishna, for feeling the presence of Krishna, a living presence. When he came back to his school, he was a changed man. He was no longer interested in logic. One day, the scene is this. He is teaching the youngsters in his class, and they're staring at him as if he's crazy. And he says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "You have not been teaching us logic. You're just talking about Krishna." And then Nimai said, "Oh, but I have lost all interest in logic, and I beseech you, my boys, if you want your good, forget all that logic. Take the name of Krishna." And he said, "I will not teach anymore." And he closed his school. This reminds us of Adi Shankaracharya, who is walking along the riverbank one day, and he sees a young man studying Sanskrit grammar, and repeating a sutra in Sanskrit grammar, Dukrin Karane. And Shankaracharya bursts out into song that Prapte sannihite marane nahi nahi rakshati Dukrin Karane bhaja govindam bhaja mudhamate. When death is close, your grammar is not going to save you. At the door of death, grammar is of no avail to you, my boy. Repeat the name of Krishna, repeat the name of Krishna, repeat the name of Krishna, you fool. So this is a great scholar monk, Shankaracharya, singing this. So in the same way. And then what he did was, he gathered his followers, he taught them to repeat the name of Krishna, to sing and dance and worship and lead a pious life. They were devotees of Krishna already. The worship of Krishna was well established in Navadvip. But this new form of ecstatic singing in public, and they would set out in the morning, like what is called Usha Kirtan. In the early morning, they would set out in groups and go around the town with these drums and cymbals and singing and dancing. It was like a revolution. It didn't go down well with many. The older ones, the more respected Vaishnavas, they thought he was a pest. And Advaita Acharya, a very great Vaishnava teacher, elderly. So other devotees, other people of the town complained to him, "What's he doing, this boy?" Advaita Acharya, however, he had this dream of Krishna, and who says to Advaita Acharya that what you have worshipped and yearned for, not only in this life, for lifetimes, that is accomplished now. I come again in the form of Nimai. I am there. So Advaita Acharya would tell others that, wait, what he is doing is all right, and you wait and see how this develops, plays out in future. And he became a great devotee of Nimai, of Gauranga. There are so many other stories. For example, you have Srivasa, another elderly devotee. And what the devotees would do, that Gauranga or Nimai would gather his followers in Srivasa's courtyard, and they would do kirtan, sing and dance for hours and hours, sometimes throughout the night. And Srivasa would feed them sumptuously. It was a festival, and it would often be repeated. One such festival is stunning. The descriptions are so minute and extraordinary. It is called Mahaprakasha, the great revelation or the great light. One of these evenings, Gauranga went into an ecstasy, and everybody felt a powerful divine presence in their midst, as if God had incarnated in the form of this beautiful young man. And they gathered around him, they sang, they danced, and he repeatedly went into ecstasies. Every hair on his body stood on its end. Tears flowed incessantly, drenching his face and his chest. And he danced and he sang. People around him were aroused into a divine mood. He would call them one by one and he would touch them and they would go into ecstasy. They would have the vision of God. Just imagine. There is sometimes the most humble of them, the most nondescript, ordinary among them, he would call them first, embrace them and exalt them. There's a very touching story of I think his name was Mukunda probably, one of the most angelic devotees, a very sweet person. Everybody loved him. He was in that group, but Sri Chaitanya, Gauranga would not allow him to enter. He kept on trying to go close to Gauranga, to Nimai, to touch him or to get his blessings, but Gauranga told them not to let him in. It's a big crowd. He said to keep him outside, even though he besieged. And finally he asked somebody going into the house of Srivasa, when will my turn come? When will I get to see the Lord? I'm hearing all this from a distance, but I can't see, I can't go in. Somebody pushed ahead and whispered to Nimai, he's standing outside, you love him so much, why don't you let him come? When he's asking, when will his turn come? And Nimai said rather harshly, tell him not in a million births, in a million births. After a million births, he'll get to see me. So they went back and conveyed this, afraid of what the effect will be. And they were startled to see that young man, Mukunda, dancing in joy. That only a million births, then I get to see my beloved Lord. And then Nimai Gauranga called him and said, call him in now. And he embraced him and he said, I want to show you the nature of real devotion, what real devotion is like. There's also the very touching story of Haridas, who was a Muslim, and he was very devoted to, because of Gauranga, he became very devoted to Krishna. But, a little historical background, by that time, the medieval period in India, large parts of northern India and eastern India were under Muslim rule. So you come across this again and again, how Hindu life was impacted by an alien rule which was often either indifferent or persecution, outright persecution. So Haridas, being that's not his original name, but Haridas literally means the servant of Hari. Being a Muslim, immediately drew the ire of the clerics, and they arrested him on the sin of apostasy. And it's a great sin. So they condemned him to be whipped in a public square and taken from town to town and village to village and whipped in public. But the miracle was that every time the lash landed on his back, he felt a thrill of joy, and he took the name of Krishna even more loudly, to the exasperation of the guards and the soldiers. Finally, he fainted, and they threw him into a river, thinking he was dead. But he revived, and he came back, running back to Chaitanya, and he narrated all this to the wonder of the crowds which had gathered around Chaitanya. And Chaitanya embraced him. He goes into ecstasy. The evening comes close. Food. Srivasa, of course, was always generous, and this day his generosity exceeded all bounds. He fed everyone and surrounded, and the others had all got food. They all wanted to feed Nimai. By the way, the Vaishnava religion is big on food. So you'll have all sorts of delicious food, always, yes. So it comes from the original, the Vraja of in Vrindavan, when Krishna, the child Krishna, is fed with all kinds of delicacies. So that becomes a form of practice, actually. If you go to the temples in Vrindavan, you will find, for example, in Radha Raman, and then and one or two other temples, just the arrangement of food. The whole courtyard is filled with dishes. So everybody thinks it's a great honor to make a dish and bring it. And they all wanted Chaitanya or Gauranga to eat something. That's almost humanly impossible. The account is the Lord that day ate enough for 1,000 people. So he tasted a little to satisfy everybody, a little of everybody's food. The inner idea is, if the Lord accepts this, then all my past karma is absorbed and absolved by the Lord, because he has accepted my service. Evening, Arati, time for the evening worship. Who will do Arati? They thought we should do Arati to Gauranga. And they invited his mother, Shachi Devi, This is remarkable. The mother doing arati, performing which you usually do to the deity, not to a human being, to her son. And she agreed miraculously. She came in the front of hundreds of people. She performed the arati, and her son, Nimai, goes into ecstasy. And even more unthinkable, he touches her head with his foot, which is unthinkable for in a Hindu context, or any context, I would say, of a child touching his mother with her foot on her head, that too. And she goes into samadhi. So this was, the description is, people, as the evening progressed, people found it unbearable. That's the description. That when he passed among them, their hair stood on their end, their eyes filled with tears, they shivered as he walked in back and forth among them, dancing, and it was kind of unbearable for them. It was too much. And so they begged him that we want to see you in your human form again. And he was in the human form. It's not that he had developed 6 arms or something. He was in the human form, but they found this is not a human being. This is some kind of a divine presence. Finally, at midnight, the account is, he uttered a great roar and fell down on the ground. His body became deathly pale. This happened again and again. At this time also came Nityananda, who was very central to Sri Chaitanya's life story. So he was a wandering monk, and Sri Chaitanya knew that he is coming. And he will help Chaitanya in his mission of spreading the ecstatic love, bhakti of Krishna. So this is the stage for an incident referred to in the Kirtan, the saving of Jagai and Madhai. This is a well-known story, especially in Bengal. So these two were, they were actually public officials. They were actually supposed to be something like the sheriff of the town, Kotwal they were called. But they were thugs. They were like ruffians. They terrorized the local people and misbehaved with everybody. And everybody was exasperated with them. So one day, and he would make fun of the Vaishnavas who sang and danced. The Jagai and Madhai would make fun of them. So one day, Nityananda and Chaitanya, or Gauranga and Nityananda, they went, accompanied by the disciples, by the devotees, singing and dancing. They came upon Jagai and Madhai, these two, who scoffed them, mocked them, made fun of them. Now, Nityananda tried to convince them, to reform them. One of Jagai or Madhai, threw a brickbat and hit Nityananda on the head, and he started bleeding profusely. So there's a beautiful description of the scene that Gauranga lost his temper. And the description is of this fiery golden disc descending from the sky. You know, the Sudarshan Chakra, the discus of Vishnu. And finally, Jagai and Madhai fell at the feet of Sri Chaitanya, Gauranga and Nityananda, and they were converted. They became, the transformation was actually remarkable. Chaitanya embraced both of them, Gauranga, he embraced both of them. And from that time onwards, they were completely changed characters. They went around the town individually to the homes of people who they had aggravated, begging for their forgiveness, falling at their feet. There is a beautiful description of how they would sit on the ghat, the bathing ghat near the river. And as people came down to bathe, these former ruffians, they would sit with hands folded and weep and beg for their forgiveness and say, as you go down to the river, trample upon us, walk upon us and go down to the river. And they were turned into veritable saints in their life. In fact, there is a bathing ghat which they constructed with their own hands. It's still there for the devotees. So this is Jagai Madhai Uddhar. This is a theme for plays. I know I have told this earlier, but I can't resist telling you again. One of the funniest things that I've ever seen in my life. This is long ago. This is more than 20 years ago in our monastery. So these traditional plays, they're called Jatra. They are performed even now. And in the monastery, we encourage people to come and perform it on festive days to keep that art form alive. Now this one was performed not outside but inside an auditorium. And I remember there's a stage. And now what happened was the group which was performing, and the theme was the saving of Jagai and Madhai, Jagai Madhai Uddhar, this particular story. Now this group they were amateurs, I think, and they hadn't quite rehearsed their lines. So the whole thing descended into chaos. What happened was, so there's always a prompter, a person who has got the script and who's at the corner of the stage who whispers it out so that the actors can hear this. So you would see all the actors, the Jagai and Madhai and Krishna Chaitanya and Nityananda and the disciples, they would all come, make their entry, and all rush to that corner of the stage. Everybody gathered. Nobody was in center stage. Everybody gathered at one corner. We was thinking, what's going on? Then we realized the prompter is there. He was reading out the lines. And now at the climax of the whole play, when Nityananda is bleeding and people are pleading with Jagai and Madhai not to behave in this way, to turn a new leaf and so on and so forth. And one of those, Jagai and Madhai, one of them had a magnificent mustache like this. And he was yelling abuse at Chaitanya and Nityananda. And one part of the mustache came off and it dangled like this. He wasn't aware, the actor, but we all saw it. And everybody burst out, laughing. And unfortunately for the actors, the hall was half full of kids from the neighborhood who were delighted. Everybody knows the story. Nobody's really interested in how the story will go. Everybody knows it. So they're delighted at this, and they rolled on the floor in laughter. And then a master stroke of improvisation. The actor who was acting as Chaitanya, he rushed forward and he said, "Oh Jagai, do not speak thus, hush." And he closed Jagai's mouth with his hand and quickly adjusted the mustache. And then he stepped back and was done, and everybody clapped and cheered. So more than Jagai and Madhai, people were happy that the mustache had been rescued, saved. At this time, so the next big thing that happened was Chaitanya takes, Gauranga, he takes sannyas, he takes the vows of monasticism. And his guru is another monk of the 10 orders to which we belong. His name is Keshava Bharati, who gives him the vows of monasticism. And Gauranga, Nimai, now becomes known as Chaitanya. The full name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Bharati. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Bharati. So he had two gurus. The one who gave him the Krishna mantra, Ishwara Puri, and the one who initiated him into sannyasa, Keshava Bharati. Now, when you become a monk, you can't stay at home anymore. You have to leave home. And his idea was, I will go away to Vrindavan, where Krishna and the gopis and Radha, they played the Ras Leela, and I will live there for the rest of my life. But that was very, very far away, hundreds of kilometers away, hundreds of miles away to the north. And in those days, travel was very difficult and dangerous also. And his mother wept because she had already lost one son, and now this boy would go away, and she would, obviously, if he went to Vrindavan, she would never see him again in her life. So Nityananda and the other Vaishnavas, they hit upon this plan that let's persuade him to an alternative to Vrindavan, which brings us to our story, Puri, Jagannath Puri, which is in the east of Bengal, to the southeast, in the state of Orissa. And that is also a very central pilgrimage site for Bengal Vaishnavas, even till today. Bengalis love going to Puri. And that is... the central deity there is Jagannath. And the name, you find it in the English dictionary, Juggernaut. It comes from Jagannath. The story is that when the British first came to India, and they first came to Orissa and Puri, and they saw, so the annual car festival of Jagannath, it's held even now. It's been going on for centuries. So each year, the images of Jagannath, Jagannath is none other than Krishna. Krishna is, another name for Jagannath is Sri Purushottama. The whole of Puri is called Sri Purushottama Kshetra, the city of Purushottama. Purushottama is another name for Krishna. So Jagannath, Balabhadra, and Subhadra, or Balaram and Subhadra. These are the three images. And these are taken on separate chariots. But these chariots are humongous. They're huge, I mean, towering wooden chariots. And they go on a journey. The idea is that Krishna goes to Vrindavan once in a year to meet his beloved gopis. And in the gardens of, there's a place called the Gundicha Bari. So in the gardens there, the images go there, they're installed there for a few days, and then they come back again to the main temple of Jagannath. So Krishna Chaitanya, he agreed to go to Jagannath Puri and stay there instead of going away to Vrindavan. So he sets out. This is also a description. So very detailed descriptions are there, luckily. He sets out with a small group of his most ardent followers to make the difficult journey. For example, they pass through forests, which is now Calcutta, one of the most heavily inhabited cities in the world, densely populated cities in the world. This was before the British came and made Calcutta their capital. So it was forest, just forest. And they had to walk hundreds of miles through forests and cross over borders. So Bengal at that time was ruled by a Muslim ruler, a sultan, and Orissa, which was known as Kalinga in those days, a very ancient civilization, a very ancient empire, was ruled by a Hindu king at that time, Sri Prataparudra, who later became a great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they crossed, they went. And the description is the eagerness of Sri Chaitanya to reach Jagannath. It's described how he almost ran almost all of the way. He would run, and the others had to keep up with him. Now we pick up the story. As he comes closer and closer to Jagannath Puri, the description is he slows down, as if to savor every moment of coming closer and closer to Sri Jagannath. We pick up the story from there. One place is, a very cute story, is Sakshi Gopal. This is in Cuttack. This is a temple of Krishna, the child Krishna in Cuttack, which is a few miles further from Puri. So as the party approached Sakshi Gopal, the temple, Nityananda, who accompanied Sri Chaitanya, tells him the story of Sakshi Gopal. All these stories are also included because they increase devotion when you hear these stories. The story is that there was at one time, quite maybe centuries ago, a poor Brahmin who went out on a pilgrimage to Vrindavan, which was a huge effort in those days. Now a young man from that village decided to help him. He walked with this poor Brahmin, serving him, taking care of him, this old man, taking care of him till he reached Vrindavan, and he took care of him all the time when this poor Brahmin was in Vrindavan. And this Brahmin was so happy with this young man, he said, when I go back to Cuttack, I will give you my daughter in marriage. Now they came back. Now this young man was not of the status of this Brahmin's family. So all the relatives said, they were aghast at this proposal, and they said, no, this can't be. And the Brahmin flipped, he changed his mind. Or at least he couldn't stand up to his relatives. Now this young man, he said more than anything else, he wanted this Brahmin to be true to his word. Now, he flat out denied that I had made such a promise. Now, the thing is, he had made the promise in a temple in Vrindavan in front of Krishna. And the young man had never asked this Brahmin to make such a promise. But the Brahmin said, no, I'm keeping Krishna as Gopala. Gopala as my Sakshi. Sakshi means witness. I keep Gopala as my witness, and I promise you this because you have served me so faithfully. Now this poor young man, he thought, what can I do? People think I'm a liar. So he walked all the way to Vrindavan, back again, and went to the temple and fell at the feet of the little deity there and wept that this is a question of my honor. He took the promise in front of you as keeping you as the witness. And in a dream, the Lord appeared to him and said, yes, I will testify and that I am the witness to that promise. He said, you have to come with me. And the Lord said, all right, I will come with you. But the condition is, you must believe that I am with you. You can't look back. You will hear the sound of the anklets. So he's a little baby Krishna, so he has anklets on his feet. You will hear the sound of the anklets when you walk back to your homeland. But at no point should you look back to see if I'm coming with you. If you do, I will not go with you anymore. And so the young man went, and he heard, when he would stand and listen carefully, he would hear the sound of the anklets coming behind him. And he would be thrilled with joy to think that the Lord is following him. Now, when he came very close to his home in Cuttack, he thought that I am going through all of this. Maybe it's just a hallucination. I just believe this stuff. I never even saw him. He's supposed to be right behind me, and that's Krishna. Why can't I see him? So maybe just a peek. And he looked around, and the sound of anklets disappeared. And he found this delightful little image of Krishna right behind him. But it's an image, no longer a living presence or the deity. So he wept and wept, and then Krishna said, appeared to him and said that I will not go any further with you because I have promised to. But I shall always stay here for centuries and millennia to come. I shall stay here and bless those who come, and you too shall live with me. So the villagers were called, and it says that Krishna appeared to them, maybe in the dream or whatever, and testified to what the young man was saying, and that Brahmin married off his daughter to the young man. So this couple became the servants or the priests for and for the rest of their life. They worshipped, they established the temple, which stands till today, and the beauty of that image is extraordinary there. So that's the story. And of course, Chaitanya and his followers, they sang and danced there, went into ecstasy in front of the Sakshi Gopal. From there, Chaitanya moved. He moved so fast, he left his followers behind to go to Puri Jagannath. And there's a description of the first vision of the spires. It's a very toweringly tall temple. So first vision of the spires of the temple. Chaitanya goes there, and all those who are rushing after him, they fall flat on the ground in the full salutations, and they, in an uproar, they sing and dance. At the distance, they can see the temple. So that's the sight you can see. That's Sri Krishna Chaitanya there. And if you come close to the picture at some time, you can see the spires of the temple. And on top of the temple, hundreds of feet up in the main temple is Jagannath temple, the temple of Jagannath. On top of that, there are a series of layers of flags flying. And the highest, there is what is called, in Odia they call it a bana. It's a huge flag which flies there. And we have it here. There, you see, if it's unfurled, it will stretch across the room. Very luckily, it was the grace, I think, of God only. Last year, a monk came from India. And for some reason, he bought this flag here. He knew the reason. He said, I want to visit the place established by Swami Vivekananda. And as a gift, he bought the original flag. You can get the flag. It's changed regularly. So devotees love to have this flag. If they get it, they keep it for generations in their home. So we are very grateful that we have the actual flag here. Sri Krishna Chaitanya went into the temple. They warned him, you can't go near the image of Jagannath because the temple priests are there. They will catch hold of you and beat you up if you try to do that. But he wouldn't listen. In a frenzy, he rushed to embrace Jagannath. In the process, he fell down. The temple priests were about to attack him when Vasudeva Sarvapriyananda, who was a great scholar of Vedanta and who happened to come from the same place as Nimai, as Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, as in his younger days, was actually a student of Vasudeva Sarvapriyananda. And this Vasudeva Sarvapriyananda, who was a great scholar, saintly man, he had been appointed as a court scholar, a court pandit by the king of Kalinga, of Puri at that time, Kalinga, the entire empire, Prataparudra. So Vasudeva Sarvapriyananda was an important man in the court. By the way, the royal lineage still continues. Even now, the present king of Puri is there, a very distinguished and scholarly gentleman. So the kings are called Gajapati. Gajapati means the elephant lords. I suppose they used to have lots and lots of elephants. I don't know if they have any elephants anymore, but they used to have lots of elephants. And they regard, one of their duties is they are the first servant of Jagannath, the first servant of the Lord, so to say. And when the car festival, the chariot festival of Jagannath happens every year, as part of the ritual, the king has to come and sweep the road before the Lord. And being the king, of course, he has a golden broomstick. So, and actually a golden broomstick, a stick made of, a broom made of gold. Vasudeva Sarvabhauma rescued this young monk. And he was attracted strangely to this young monk, and he told his students to protect him and take him back. He had fainted, so he take him back to his house. And he recognized him. Isn't this that young boy who used to come to to my class years ago in Navadvip, in that village school? And it was a strange thing that when his students touched the body of Krishna Chaitanya, they were filled with a kind of unknown fervor, devotion for God, and they started chanting the name of God. And Vasudeva Sarvabhauma was so overcome, he bowed down to this young monk. But next morning, his pride at scholarship and all came back. And then he started talking to Chaitanya and saying, look, it's all right that you have become a monk, but this singing and dancing is silly sentimentalism. This won't do. You must study Vedanta. Come to class. Watch YouTube. So, learn Vedanta. Krishna Chaitanya was very, very humble. He said, all right, why don't you teach me? And Vasudeva Sarvabhauma said, all right, from tomorrow onwards, I will teach you the Brahma Sutras with the commentaries of Shankaracharya. So they started. And Krishna Chaitanya would sit silently and listen attentively, but without making any remark or giving any sign at all. After some time, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma got irritated, and he said, are you understanding anything I'm saying? Krishna Chaitanya said very humbly that the sutras composed by Badarayana Vyasa, the sutras, Brahma Sutras, somebody translated it as God Sutras, the sutras of God. Brahma Sutras, I understand them, but I don't understand the commentary of Shankara, nor do I understand especially your explanations. It don't make any sense. This drove the old man into a fury, and he said, how dare you? And he challenged him to one of those traditional debates. This went on for a long time, and at every point, the Vasudeva Sarvabhauma was completely defeated, and he was shocked. He was completely outmaneuvered. Of course, Krishna Chaitanya was already a past master at logic. But the crucial turning point came that night when the old Pandit went into a troubled sleep. Then he had a dream. And this dream would be repeated again and again throughout the life of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. In the dream, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma saw a luminous divine figure with 6 arms. In 2 of the arms, the figure held a bow and arrows like Ramachandra. In the 2 other hands, he was playing the flute like Krishna. And the last 2 arms, he was holding the monk's staff and the water pot kamandalu, danda kamandalu of a monk. So, signifying thereby Rama, Krishna, and Krishna Chaitanya, that they are the same being. And this vision others would also get throughout the life of Krishna Chaitanya. So next morning, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma simply came and fell at the feet of his erstwhile student and said, forgive me, I did not know who you are. And Krishna Chaitanya embraced him. From that time onwards, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma and his disciples. And so once he accepted Krishna Chaitanya, the scholarly community of Puri, they all accepted immediately. And because of that, the interest of the king also was aroused, and he also came and became a devotee of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. There are remarkable descriptions of Krishna Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. Every day he would go early in the morning to the temple, and for long hours he would chant the name of Krishna. He would stand in ecstasy. There is a pillar. There are depictions in art, in Vaishnava art, of Krishna Chaitanya. He was toweringly tall, and he would raise his hand and put one hand to support himself on the pillar and gaze longingly at the image of Jagannath. It is said that in ecstasy, his body would generate such heat that his handprints were burnt into the pillar. The pillar is still there. I haven't seen the handprint, but the pillar is still there. Many of these things might seem unlikely or exaggerations over the centuries, but we find literally the same things repeated in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. The same ecstasies, the same descriptions, the same profuse weeping, the standing of hair on its end, shivering of the body, sometimes sweating, sometimes weeping, tremendous heat generated by the body sometimes a kind of golden light emanating. Sri Ramakrishna would at one point cover his body with a shawl and he would say, Bhetarja, go inside, go inside. He would, that he didn't want people to be attracted by that beauty. He would say, disappear, go inside, withdraw inside. He didn't want people to be pulled by that. So these things happen. And they are very well recorded in the Vaishnava Shastras. These are Ashtashaktik Bika, they are called. The eightfold divine manifestations of the heights of love, of prema, love of God. Now, the idea there is, oh, by the way, that vision which Vasudeva Sarvabhauma had, he made an image of that, and that image is there in the temple of Jagannath even now, the six-hand figure of Chaitanya, of Sri Chaitanya. The inner theology of this is, who is Chaitanya? So according to the Vaishnava theologians, the idea is that Radha, who loved Krishna the most, now Krishna had a desire to taste the love of Radha. How does it feel to love God like Radha does? So Krishna is born this time as Krishna Chaitanya, who is Radha on the outside, so always pining and crying and weeping for God, and Krishna on the inside. So Krishna wants to feel what Radha feels. And there is a great depth to that theology. So Krishna is the ultimate reality, and Krishna is supposed to have three powers, which is called Swarupa Shakti, his innermost power, Maya Shakti, by which he creates the entire universe, and Jiva Shakti, by which he projects himself as us, as sentient beings. And in his Swarupa Shakti, the power which is his own inner nature, there are three aspects which might be familiar to Vedanta in Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, but the meaning they give there is different. Now what interests us is the Ananda aspect, the bliss aspect. So in the bliss aspect, the highest bliss aspect is called Ladini Shakti, the delight of God in himself. And Radha is supposed to be the manifestation, an avatar, an incarnation of that Ladini Shakti. So Radha is specially worshipped in Vrindavan, even now. So the way people greet each other there is Radhe Radhe. Radha is the Sambodhan, that means the how you address, invocation for Radha. There is a story very touching story of how Sri Krishna Chaitanya is standing there in one of his early morning visits to the temple. It's very crowded. Often it's very crowded, and people are pushing and shoving, and his followers are trying to keep him, surround him, and protect him. An old woman who has come from some remote village in Orissa has come to have a darshan of Jagannath, and in her eagerness to see the image of Jagannath in that crowd, this little old woman climbs over Chaitanya and on his shoulder, puts her knee on his shoulder, and because he's the tallest of them all, to the fury of the devotees who try to pull her down and beat her up or whatever it is. And Krishna Chaitanya says, no, this is real devotion. She's not aware of anything or anybody. She just wants the Lord. By the way, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he actually went and embraced the image of Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. What he did was, he knew the priest would catch him and beat him up if he dared to come and touch the image. So what he did, before rushing in there, he scattered money all around, and all the greedy priests were scrambling for money. And so he jumped in and he embraced the image of Jagannath. And Sri Ramakrishna was delighted when he heard the story. By the way, this Jagannath Puri is the one place Sri Ramakrishna did not go to. He went to Benares, he went to Vrindavan. He said, if I go there to Jagannath Puri, I will not be able to retain this body. I will not come back to this physical frame anymore. I'll become, absorbed in Jagannath forever. So after his Mahasamadhi, Holy Mother, Ma Sharada, she went to Jagannath Puri, and she was made of sterner stuff. So she went to Jagannath Puri, and she took the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, this picture, and showed it to Jagannath. So that is his visit to Jagannath Puri. We don't have much time. Let me just mention one more delightful incident. There are so many beautiful stories about Jagannath Puri and Sri Krishna Chaitanya there. The place he stayed is a small room called the Gambhira. And they say that he was so tall that he almost, once he lay down, you couldn't pass around him. He would cover most of the room. He would go out on regular kirtans with the singing parties, and these became a big feature of the daily life in Puri. The kirtans, the singing and dancing organized by Sri Chaitanya. Now comes the big event of the year, the annual chariot festival, Ratha Yatra. Even now it's a huge event. I was looking it up. Last year in the chariot festival, 3 million people came on that day, on the first day of the chariot festival. So you can imagine hundreds of thousands of people. Even in those days, it will be tens of thousands at least. And Sri Chaitanya had organized 7 kirtan parties, 7 parties of musicians, each with, 8 drums and 32 cymbals. And the 4 of them in front of the chariots, a chariot of Jagannath, 2 on each side of the chariot of Jagannath, and 1 behind the chariots. And he would sing and dance with each of these parties in turn. So the story goes, the Lord apparently divided himself into 7, and he was singing and dancing with all 7 groups of dancers. There's a saying, Rathecha Vamanam Drishtva Punarjanmana Vidyate. If you have a darshan, the vision of Jagannath in the chariot, you are freed from the cycle of birth and rebirth. Seeing the Lord in the chariot, one is freed from the cycle of birth and rebirth. I remember there was a very wonderful monk, Swami Nirmuktanandaji. He was about 100 years old at that time. He was a disciple of Swami Shivananda. In that age, so he had to be wheeled along in a wheelchair. So at one day in our monastery in Belur Math, I bowed down to him like others, and I recited this. Seeing the Lord seated in the chariot, one is freed from the cycle of birth and death. So, Rathecha Vamanam Drishta, we see you seated in the chariot, we are freed from the cycle of birth and death. He was a remarkable monk. Remarkable monk. I asked him once, this is sort of tangential, but I'll tell you, it's very touching. So, Swami Ranganathanandaji, who was the 13th president of our order, he used to say something unique, a little strange. He would say that, I do not want moksha, freedom. I will come back again to do Swami Vivekananda's work. Now, this monk, Nirmuktanandaji, Upen Maharaj, he would sometimes go to Ranganathanji. Both were disciples of Swami Shivananda. So, that's Swami Shivananda there. So both were disciples of Swami Shivananda, and he would often go to Ranganathanji. And remember, this monk at that time was in his 90s. And he would ask Ranganathanandaji, Swami Ranganathananda, what will happen to me? What will happen to me? One day, Swami Ranganathanandaji told him that you need not be concerned. This is your last life. You will attain moksha in this very life. But I shall come back again. I want to come back again to do Swamiji's work. And then this monk told me once, Upen Maharaj, look at his attitude, the heroic attitude, that I want to come again and again and enjoy the play of the Lord. I don't want moksha, liberation. And I said to him, be that as it may, but he has given you, I said in Bengali, apnake to chuti diye diyechen, you have got a permanent vacation now. So you've been freed from samsara. And see the absolute rationality of this monk. He said, let us see, in Bengali he said, Mahapurusha Kripa, the grace of Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda, let us see. So he is not sentimental about it. Now, one day, I was wheeling him along in his wheelchair, I still remember, in front of the main temple of Sri Ramakrishna. And I said half jokingly to him, we're talking about this issue of freedom in this life. I said, well, you are through, Swami. What about the rest of us? What about the rest of us? Will we be saved? Will we get liberation? But he took it seriously. He said, he pondered for a couple of seconds, and then he said, I had to lean close to him to listen to what he was saying. I still remember, he said, in Bengali I'll translate, Ebar Mayer Kripaye Onekei Tore Jabe. By the grace of the mother, many will cross over the ocean of samsara this time. This time means in this incarnation of Sri Ramakrishna in this age. So anyway, that's just a tangent, but I remembered that. And before the great car festival, chariot festival of Jagannath, there's a description of how Chaitanya led his devotees, large numbers of them. He arranged 100 water pots to continuously fetch water and cleanse the entire compound of the temple, the Jagannath temple, and scrub every temple. It's a huge job. And then they went on this, the chariot on the route. Thousands of people. So if you get a darshan of Jagannath, that's a very great thing. And even greater is if you get to hold the ropes pulling the chariot, if you can hold that and pull it. Even now, children, at least in Bengal and Bihar, Orissa, they do this Ratha Yatra themselves. At every home, the kids, I don't know how many do it now, but the kids we used to do it. You'd have little wooden chariots, toy chariots. And on that day, you get new clothes. And you get to pull the chariot along. And people will come, and you can offer the people sweets, and they will give you money. So that's a very sweet kind of festival. That's in imitation of the great chariot festival in Puri. That's part of the Vaishnava culture of that place. So there's a story of how Sri Krishna Chaitanya sang and danced in fervor throughout that procession. And he was joined by thousands and upon thousands of people. They reached Gundicha Bari, the gardens. There again, there was continuous kirtan and singing and dancing. At one point on the return journey, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, exhausted, he lay down to rest. When he got up, a crisis had developed. The chariot would not move. And they pulled and pulled, hundreds of people trying to tug the ropes and get the chariot moving. They employed elephants. Apparently there was a surfeit of elephants there. The elephants to push the chariot along. The chariot would not move. When Krishna Chaitanya was told about this, he comes and he gives a nudge to the chariot, and the description is that it fairly rattled along after that. So there are many such wonderful stories there. So that was a very significant event, and it's not just once, a number of times, as long as he was there. He went to the south of India, and a wonderful tour of the Indian states in the south. Many wonderful incidents there, especially the meeting with Rai Ramananda and other incidents there. Then, because bhakti was specially developed in the south, the Sri Vaishnavas, the Madhvas, they had a lot of things are imported from the south into into Gaudiya Vaishnava theology also. And he went also, his cherished desire, to Vrindavan. That also happened. Sri Krishna Chaitanya went with a group of devotees to Vrindavan and revived the Vrindavan culture there. Again, located the places. Now when you go to Vrindavan, the special places associated with Krishna, they were lost at one time. It's Sri Krishna Chaitanya and his disciples later on, Rup, Sanatan, who meditated and in meditative states found the exact places where these events had taken place. So now there are a lot of temples there. Part of that is at least due to Sri Krishna Chaitanya and his disciples, the Goswamis who came after him. In the last years of his life, last 14 years almost, he lived in Puri. His death is mysterious because what we hear, either the devotees believe he merged into Jagannath. His body was never found. He faded into Jagannath. Others say he drowned. He would sometimes rush into the ocean. The blue of the ocean reminded him of Krishna. Or sometimes it reminded him of the waters of Yamuna, the river near Vrindavan. So sometimes he would rush there. At one time he nearly drowned. The fishermen had to fish him out with a net and bring him back to the shore. So maybe he drowned there. Another story is that in dancing, there were bare feet. So he cut his foot on a rock, and that became infectious, and he died of that. And there are a number of other stories. So on this day, 3 days ago, it was his birthday. We celebrate, we observe, and we pray on this holy occasion to Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. May he bless us. May Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharada, Swami Vivekananda bless us with devotion, with great devotion for the Lord. May the blessings of the Lord be always upon all of us. Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. now we have a special performance, which you have to wait a few minutes for setting up. And they are coming with the baskets. Will you introduce?
Yeah, I have it in introduction.
Yes. So maybe when they're ready, then introduce.
Yeah, give it 5 or 10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes, yes. So it'll just take around 5 minutes. We have a special performance today.
Wonderful.
foremost amongst the present generation of Saradists in India. He was initiated to Sarad playing by Sri Atanu Rakshit, a senior disciple of Pandit Radhika Mohan Mitra, and thereafter he came under the tutelage of the eminent Sarod maestro Pandit Buddha Dev Dasgupta, from whom he received extensive talim. He obtained his Bachelor of Music in Indian Classical Music from the reputed Prayag Sangeet Samiti of Allahabad. He is an A-grade artist of All India Radio and Doordarshan, and in 2003 had the privilege of performing in the prestigious National Program of Music of AIR. Pushpen's commitment to the Sarod extends into the realms of mentorship, where his educational endeavors at prestigious institutions have shaped the skills and artistic sensibilities of many young talents. With the belief that music is a continuous dialogue between generations, Pushpen ensures that the story of the Sarod is told, understood, and cherished. As a guardian of tradition and an innovator of technique, he cultivates a legacy that resonates with the purity of Indian classical music and the promise of its future. We are also happy to welcome Mir Nakibul, who will be accompanying Pushpen on the tabla. Welcome.
Hello. Is it audible? Okay. My pranam, namaskar to revered Maharaj and all of you present over here. It's a special grace of Thakur. I'm feeling extremely blessed today, like to have this rare opportunity to offer my music to Thakur, Ma and Swamiji at this extremely holy place. I have no words to mention my kind of like joy and gratitude to Maharaj that he very kindly allowed me to be here to offer my humble music. Let me start with an afternoon melody. Rag Gaur Malhar. Gaur is like now the term is synonymous to Gaur Nitai Gaurango. I don't know how far they are connected, but it is Gaur Sarang. It is absolutely a perfect afternoon melody. So I'll be presenting alap, a little elaborate, because alap is considered to be the principal part of our Hindustani music. And then I'll be entered into the Gaud part with tabla. Thank you so much. Let me start.
Thank you.
I'll be presenting Rag Shuddha Saran, another afternoon melody, and that is composed in Rag, in Tal, Tin Tal. Thank you.
That was phenomenal. I felt like I was in India right there. I really did. And we give you our enormous thanks. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Just present here. This is a great, great day for me, in fact, like having this.
Well, it was a gift for all of us from you. Thank you. Enormous thanks.
Namaste.
Maybe in the future we'll see you again.
Always.
Come again.
Always.
Thank you. Again.